Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Empathy for Ramadan. We are in our last episode. I actually can't believe it. We've had 5 over the last about 10 days, and they've flown by. And I feel a little sad that they're ending. But on a positive note, I'm here with Mariah Drissi, who is a long-term friend of mine, because we were just remembering with each other that we met in the middle of the pandemic many moons ago and finally reunited over a discussion that we're both really passionate about. So I'm going to introduce her in just 1 minute. But for everyone that's tuned in, thank you for joining us. If you haven't been here with us for the rest of our Empathy for Ramadan series, this is a series that is supposed to allow non-Muslims, Muslims, anybody out there, the opportunity to understand a little bit more about Ramadan, what it means in different parts of the world, and allow you to ask any questions that you would like. So please do join us in the conversation. You can put your comments in the chat box, and Maria or I, wherever they are, will try to act on them. But meanwhile, Maria, thank you so much for coming and giving up some of your Ramadan to join us here. It's, as I said, I'm super excited to see you here and to have the conversation.
Oh, thanks. I know we haven't spoken so long, so it's hard to we're going to get straight into it. We've got so much to catch up on.
I know so much. And 30 minutes, you feel like you've got ages, and suddenly it's gone. Suddenly the conversation's over. So before we catch up on the world, let's talk about this really special month, 9th month of the calendar. We're in the middle now of Ramadan. I noticed on my side of the world, the moon is looking very full. So we're halfway through. Tell us, from your experience as a woman, as a person, what does Ramadan mean to you, and how's it been so far?
Yeah, Ramadan for me is really like a boot camp every year that we have, and it's a blessing for us, because I think as humans we don't realize how much we need routine and structure in our lives. And the way I look at Islam is like God has essentially given us all the tools to just be human without feeling confused in what our purpose is, what are we supposed to be doing, what's the point of everything. And I feel like Ramadan is one of those things that fit into that, where it's a month that gives us that structure so that we know every single year there's a period of time where we sort ourselves out, improve ourselves, and then try to maintain everything we've adopted throughout the year and just keep leveling up, basically. So in a nutshell, yeah.
In a nutshell, just a minor boot camp. Tell me about, but tell the audience about your purpose. I know a little bit about it because I've been following you and your work for a while. But when you talk about Ramadan allowing you to kind of reconnect with purpose and reset, tell us a little bit about your purpose.
I feel like there's a universal purpose, and that's going to come from more of my Islamic background, where it's simply worship God. And worshiping God isn't literally just praying all day. It's worshiping God through serving God and just being in touch with a human. So being a human, essentially, your job, if you're a doctor, if you're a teacher, whatever it is, like that essentially is a form of worship, because you're serving people, you're doing, as I say, you're doing God's work, so that's how I do see that we have this universal purpose to worship God, but then we all have our individual things as well, which is, I guess, just for this life. It's a temporary thing, and when you're in complete alignment is when you're able to match your dunya purpose, which is essentially this world, line it with the spiritual purpose that we all share, which is to worship God. And I feel like for me, my one is it evolves. It's not necessarily like, I know it's in the creative space, definitely. It's around promoting the positive image of Muslims in, I guess, media mostly, because that's my creative side. But how that looks, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to work in fashion to do that, or I'm just going to make documentaries. It's definitely in the creative space. And I see it as a way as dawah. Dawah in Arabic is like kind of spreading the message of Islam. And I do that indirectly through like my artistic work, I guess.
And when you celebrate Ramadan in the UK, which is where you are today, and actually you are our first guest in what I would describe as a Western market, I guess. The other 4 episodes have all been people from the Gulf or from the Middle East or somewhere that has a predominantly Muslim following, and therefore Ramadan is everywhere, omnipresent, all day and all night, every day. In the UK, where there's such a mix of cultures, and perhaps not everybody understands Ramadan as much as they do in that part of the world, what's it like? What's Ramadan like in the UK as a British Muslim?
I think Britain, terms of a non-Muslim country, it's definitely one of the best places to be a Muslim, even though apparently now it's like the second most miserable place on earth.
I saw that. Oh, Britain.
So despite that, I'd say if being able to be a Muslim here, it's not necessarily difficult. I know Islamophobia has risen a lot in the last few months because of all the, you know, world affairs and stuff, but generally, like, we have mosques, we've got this thing called Ramadan lights, so it's essentially like our Christmas lights, you know, so central London's lit up, so there is a lot of acknowledgement that it's Ramadan. It's not like I said, it's not difficult, but comparing it, because I spent the first week in Riyadh actually this year, and that was my first time going to Riyadh, and it was nice to spend Ramadan in a Muslim country, so I have something to compare to, and I do realize that I guess the disadvantages, especially for like kids in school and people at work, is your timetable doesn't change. It's of course not a Muslim country, so if work starts at 8 or not, that's it. So regardless of how much sleep you got, it doesn't matter. Whereas in Muslim countries, it's naturally a little bit more, it's more accommodating, and things start a bit later, and everything's more alive at night because they take into consideration it's Ramadan. So these kind of things really, I think, play a part to make it a bit more difficult, but it's not necessarily like hindering us, you know.
Yeah, actually, we had that conversation in one of our other shows, which was, how do you in non-Muslim countries manage the work day, you know, and do you feel that you get empathy from others who are non-Muslim, who are non-fasting, to understand that, you know, when you go about your Ramadan routines as a family or as an individual, do you feel that you get empathy from people, non-Muslims in the UK? Or you mentioned their Islamophobia, do you experience discrimination, or generally you feel that there is an openness to how the Muslims are spending this month?
I'm going to grab a tissue. Sorry, my one nostrils running. It's going to be one.
Go. We can't have you sick on a live conversation. If you want to follow more of Maria's work, you'll see across the bottom of the screen there, Maria's new documentary, which is called Britain's First Mosque, is on YouTube. So do go have a look. You can Google her name and the title. I don't know a huge amount about it, but I have seen her advertising it, and it is all, of course, about Britain's first mosque and the history of Islam. So do go check Maria out. But back to the question. Tell us, do you feel empathy from others across the UK at this time?
I think it's a mix, and I guess it's also what kind of like echo chamber you're in a way, because I guess if you're living in certain parts of England where the only familiarity they have with Islam is what they see in the news and whatever, and like stereotypes, then there's not going to be much empathy from them. I think on LBC I heard someone saying, oh, if they're not happy here, why don't they just leave? And it's like, the presenter was like, well, if they're born here, where do they leave? Where they're from originally. It's like, what? They were born here though. This is where they're from. So you have obviously got that ignorance, but generally I think so. Yeah, people, even the other day actually, I went to have iftar, and we were a little bit late, so it was already past, and the woman, this is in Cambridge as well, so it's not necessarily London where it's super as diverse, but like, oh, are you fasting? Okay, I'll try to get your table really quickly. And I was like, oh, that's really lovely. Like, it was really sweet. So those little things, I do feel like there's definitely there's empathy and people joining in as well. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, I'm doing Ramadan this month, I'm going to try it out.
Yeah, actually, my guest on Monday said she lives in Doha in Qatar, and she said she feels that there are many more people from the West or from non-Muslim communities who are really interested in Islam, in potentially converting, or maybe not, but really understanding Islam, that she felt, Dana, that's a real shift, and that there is, like you said, people that just want to be part of the movement, want to understand the faith, and know a little bit more. But Maria, I know, again, as somebody who's interested in your work, that you work a lot in fashion. You started a lot of your work as a model, as a hijabi, covered, veiled, whichever word you prefer, model. Let's talk a little bit about that, about being what's the term you prefer, Maria? Hijabi?
Oh, you can say hijabi. I'm not as fast. Yeah, we know.
Anyway, okay, well, as a very beautiful hijabi woman, tell us a little bit about, before we get to the kind of fashion part of it, again, as a hijabi woman, do you think things have changed since you've started your career in fashion and modeling and media? As a covered woman, how's it evolving? How do you feel it sort of is received and accepted today?
it's definitely evolved, especially like in the industry itself, because I guess that was the whole big deal of it all when, I did that campaign. It was like, oh, we've never seen, a Muslim woman in a mainstream campaign and with a mainstream brand supporting visible Muslim women. And so since then, it's definitely evolved where it's become way more normalized. And we can see that also in the numbers as well, like in the economics of like the modest fashion space. And I think people's attitudes naturally have changed around it as well, because it's become so prominent. There's a little bit more, even if people don't want to like the idea of it, it's still become more familiar to them by force, because it's just everywhere. You see billboards now on buses and especially on social media. So I would say it's evolved. What do you think? Do you feel like, from someone that's not in like necessarily in the hijab space but still exposed to it?
Yeah, I definitely think there's an openness to it. I think people still have a lot of questions, particularly women, actually, about do you do your hair underneath it, and when do you take it off, and can your brother see you without your scarf? And I think people have a lot of questions, but I don't feel that they're negative questions, right? I feel that they're curious questions. And I was also recently in Saudi, and I didn't cover my hair, but I did wear full cover and full abaya for the entire time. And for anyone who's never worn an abaya, you should go to the Middle East and wear one, because you feel like a princess. It is just the most beautiful thing to wear. Even when you've got trainers on, you feel like you're a princess. And I asked some of the women Saudis that I met, and I said, in your opinion, should I cover my hair? Like, I know I don't have to, but would you prefer it? And they said no. They said we don't mind at all. Like, we see this as part of our identity, but this is not part of your identity. And as long as you're not disrespectful to our beliefs and our customs and our society, we don't feel that you need to. So I think that conversation is definitely, from my side, from outside, evolving. As I said, I still think there's a lot of curiosity around it. Plus, do you do your hair? What's the role of hair when you've got a hijab on? Tell us what happens.
Yeah. So do you know what? That's actually something even Muslims, like not just non-Muslims, but even Muslims have said, oh, if I'm going to go and like, if I want to dye my hair or do something different, like, why no one's going to see it? And I'm like, you should know better, because you're actually in this community. This is part of your faith. And yet that still pops up of like, oh, what's the point? And especially it's just, the idea around like, if no one's going to see it, then why do you need to do it? And for me, that's probably one of the most, like, I guess, infuriating, because if someone wants to just dress modestly for the sake of dressing modestly, not because of religion, it's like, you're not going to shave your legs or, take care of your appearance. Oh, no one's going to see it. I don't need to work out at the gym. No one's going to see my rolls or what. It's like, it doesn't, that idea wouldn't make sense. But with us, it seems to make sense in a lot of people's brains to just not bother doing your hair because no one's going to see it. And I guess that's definitely a stereotype or misconception that we do look after our hair. In fact, we should look after our hair more, because it's always covered and we're not getting enough oxygen or vitamin D and stuff. We need to be more cautious of it. There's even like these supplements now targeting like Muslim women who wear hijab, like collagen, and to boost hair production, because if you're wearing it all day really tight, then it's not going to be the best for your hair. And I guess we forget when it was revealed at a time, women weren't, on the train in London 15 hours a day wearing hijab. So we probably weren't wearing hijab back then day as working women. So yeah.
And when you get home at night, is it the first thing you do? Do you take it off, and do you feel like you're free, or no, you don't have that sense?
Yeah. As soon as definitely when I come in the house, like shoes, hijab, everything. Everything off. Yeah.
And what does it mean for accessories? A very close colleague of mine wears a headscarf, but she didn't her whole life. She shifted as a Muslim. She shifted to wearing it much later in her 30s. And I always remember she told me that one of the things she was not expecting when she started covering was how much it impacted her earrings and her necklaces, because suddenly it was all in the way and she had to swap all of her accessories and kind of redesign how she dressed. So tell us about your experience of that. I know you're very interested in fashion and part of the fashion industry. What's your experience? And is there now a full sort of fully fledged industry for modest fashion and accessories and that type of thing?
Yeah, there's definitely a huge market, a huge industry for it. And wherever you live in the world, even in the West, before that was the problem. It was not so much Muslims living in Eastern or Muslim countries. It was us that had the issue. But it's definitely improved. And I guess for me,
oh, I lost you. I lost your sound. You're back, but we can't hear you. Your sound has gone somewhere. No, I could try and lip read though. That would be an experience. No, I don't know what happened. Your screen went black and you disappeared for a moment, and now your sound has gone. Maybe you want to exit and come back. Yeah. Okay, so while Maria is exiting and coming back to join the conversation, do let us know if you've got any questions. Pop them in the comment box here and we'll either answer them live if we have time, or we'll come back to them later on. We've had some really great conversations, and in fact, some of these episodes of Empathy for Ramadan have now reached over 5,000 people, which is mind-boggling to me. So yeah, do pop your questions over there. Do let me know if there's something you want me to ask Maria about our topic today, which is really around sort of what we've called uncovering the veil on Muslim women, how they're living and how they are celebrating Ramadan in different countries. Let's see if we can hear you, Maria. Can we hear you?
I think it's come back. Yeah.
We can. Okay, super. You were just telling us about sort of modest fashion and options for Muslim women in Western countries.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely improved. And I guess because the way Muslim hijabis dress, it's so diverse. So it just really depends on the individual. I mean, if you're more conservative and you only wear abayas or jilbabs, even that, and again, I can speak for the UK, it's very accessible to find clothing. In fact, when I was in Saudi, people were asking me where I got certain outfits from. They're like, where did you buy that from? So it's definitely accessible. And then, of course, if you dress more, like myself, like casual or just off the high street, it's also easy. And I think just in general fashion trends, when I look at how it's evolved, there is always this modest space within it. And it's not targeting us. It just seems to be like fashion itself has got a lot more modest options generally, which is what we do.
And so I touched on the abaya earlier and how much I enjoy wearing them. And if I think back to when I first started wearing an abaya, mainly for festive occasions in the Muslim world, or, respectful occasions or weddings or something like that, I was always worried that Muslim women would judge me or say to me like, Mimi, why are you wearing an abaya? Because, you're not one of us. But I never experienced that, ever. I never experienced any exclusion from the Muslim community. But tell us a little bit about wearing an abaya versus, like you just said, wearing more casual clothes. Are there times you have to wear different types of clothes, or is it very open and just open to however you choose to express your fashion and your style?
So for me, yeah, on a personal, I wouldn't speak for like the whole community. I take, because if we go back to like the scripture and stuff, there is more defined ways of what is considered the correct hijab. And then I guess it becomes in some way subjective to interpretation and just people, how, just their own choices essentially. So I mix it up. Like one day I might be full abaya, full jabab. Next day I might have my, scarf wrapped backwards and I'm, just wearing a pair of jeans or whatever. I'm a bit more flexible. So not everyone may agree with that, but I guess this is my journey. And I wasn't necessarily exposed in my family to like a lot of women wearing the hijab. So it wasn't something that was normalized in my household where it's like, this is the way to wear hijab. So kind of straying away from that would seem odd. No one really wore hijab in my immediate family, actually. So I was like kind of the first in my generation to start wearing it out of all my cousins and aunts and everything. So that's probably why my journey is going to look a little bit different, opposed to if I grew up with women and elders like who were wearing the hijab in a particular way. That would probably be my example to follow. And anything outside of that might seem like I'm straying.
Yes. But so what led you to wear it? If you were surrounded by women who either weren't wearing it or were very liberally wearing it, what led you to your journey?
Do you know what? I started praying 5 times a day when I was about 17, and I was just really interested in like spirituality, religion, history, like that kind of space. So me like reading all these philosophical books and just getting part of my like university religious debate team and whatever. So I was generally interested, fascinated in religion in general. It was like an interest to me as a subject. So then naturally being a Muslim, it was like, oh well, you know, I'm so interested in this, but then I don't represent it. Like I want this to be shown. I want this to be my identity. And again, I pray 5 times a day, so I have to put a scarf on. I'm carrying this around. I just like stick it on my head and wear it. So that's it. Really started, I guess, yeah, with the interest in religion and praying and adopting the actual religion itself, and then looking at actually part of it as well.
Yeah. So you make a really interesting point there around visual identity and spiritual belief, right? So I think that's really, really fascinating. Like you're saying, you know, why don't I just walk around and I'm paraphrasing now, but kind of look like the Muslim I am to the outside world. But what did your family say, or did they have opinions on it, or were they very open to that if they hadn't chosen to have that very, I guess, visual identity themselves?
Yeah, like my mom and dad were. My mom, also similar to me, is really into the same type of subjects and stuff. So she, this is like inspirational as well. So we kind of started the journey together, which was great. But like I had a couple aunts who were saying, "You're not married yet. You know, why are you wearing it now? How are you going to get married?" You know, like the opposite. It was more of a. It wasn't like you can't or you shouldn't. It was more just questioning it as, you know, you don't need to, so why? Which is interesting because I guess people would expect the opposite.
Yes.
Whereas I had more opposition. but generally, maybe just I don't know. Like I guess because people knew my personality matched it, there wasn't a worry that Maria's following a group of friends or something. It was more like, well, this is her personality, and she's just it organically happened. So there wasn't too much friction.
Amazing. And one of the things I noticed, so I live in Malaysia, which is also an Islamic country. And I noticed here you mentioned there about sort of before you're married and children. And I started to notice all the different age ranges where children are covered sometimes by their own choice and sometimes by their mums. And interestingly, I noticed here in Malaysia, we see teeny tiny little girls, like 2 or 3 years old, in tiny little hijabs and little scarves, and they're so small. But in the Middle East, in the Gulf, you don't see that, right? Maybe from 6 or 7 at the youngest, but the really little ones don't. So in your experience, in your family, are there kind of rules about that when children should cover? Does it relate to puberty? Does it relate to marriage? What are the rules?
I think, well, in my family, yeah, if anyone started putting a hijab on one of the kids, they think they're just dressing them up. They would never take it serious. Like, and if they realized that as a parent I was doing this as a serious thing, they would give me a one. They were like, "You crazy? Are you sick? What are you doing?" Like it would definitely be it wouldn't be seen as like a positive, because they would argue that it's not compulsory. Why are you doing this? Family. So opinions aren't they're out there. But in terms of sorry, what was the second part of the question? I went on a tangent.
I'm so like completely interested in what you were saying. I was saying, are there kind of rules around it? Why different children at different ages are covering, or is it just sort of parental decisions?
I think, yeah, I don't even think it's in our family. It's not even parental. It's just down to you. It's up to you completely. Like I said, it's only really in my immediate family. Out of all my first cousins, only me and one other cousin wears the hijab. And she started later in her life as well. She started in her 30s.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just ask you endless questions about like the journey to faith and what it means, but I'm also super conscious of time and your time, and it is Ramadan. I'm sure you've got lots of other things to be doing, but let's just end with a couple of questions around sort of myths and empathy. So we've spoken a bit about fashion and covering, and you've shared a really interesting story here about choice. And I suspect for many people, they didn't think of that, because lots of non-Muslims, we think that you have to wear the hijab, and that there's very strict rules. And of course, what we've heard from Maria is a little bit of the opposite. So if there was one myth you would really like people to sort of overcome and just bust and just really sort of clear the slate around, conservative dress or wearing the hijab or how it feels or what it means to you, what would you say?
Do you know what's funny? It's exactly that, actually. That is the one thing, because I don't think I've come across like in person a lot of like bad stereotypes or whatever. It's more one, which is the "why did you bother doing your hair? Everyone's going to see it" comment, but also the like the assumption that my family were the driving factor why I began wearing the hijab, as if I had done it from a young age and just grew up this way. And so I think that's something where for a lot of people would be good to know that in some cases that is their truth, but in many cases it's not. There are many Muslims in the world who just chose to wear the hijab later on in life, and they don't come from a background. I mean, there are so many, if we can see there are so many Muslims who don't wear the hijab, then to assume anyone who does is because their family made them would be like, it'd be unreasonable. So yeah,
amazing. And for anyone listening, there are 1.9 billion Muslims in the world. So all of these stereotypes that we hear are about 24% of the world's population. This is a huge number of people. As you said, Maria, there are so many family structures, opinions, choices, personal journeys, approaches to faith within that. And I hope that this show has sort of, opened up some of them. Let's end just talking about Eid. It's not that far away now. Just tell the audience, what does Eid mean? And what happens for you in your family? What does Eid represent? People always ask, is it like Christmas? So there you go. Is it like Christmas?
Is it? Well, yeah. I mean, essentially, Christmas is a celebration, so it would come under the same category of it's a celebration. It's just we have 2 Eids each year. One is now coming up after Ramadan. Another one is in a few months. That's after Hajj. So the one that is now is more relevant. It's essentially just the marking of the end of our the spiritual month that this boot camp, and even with the celebration, it's kind of I'd say it's like a mercy for us. It's like a reward for the hardship. You're able to have a coffee in the middle of the day now, and the other little things that we take for granted. And so it's about family. I feel like it is very similar to what most cultures, most religions would consider as a celebration. We do the same thing: eat, family time, just hanging out, watch movies.
Do you buy new clothes? Because I heard that this is a great time for shopping.
Yes, so that is something as well that is advised. You could, obviously for those who can afford it, of course, buy something new, wear something new, or I mean, if you can't, even now, you could do something sustainable, like rent something. But yeah.
Amazing. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope many more people will go and find Maria. Do go and find Maria on Instagram. I haven't said this about every guest, but I really believe that she is such a beacon of education for wherever you sit, whatever faith, whatever background, whatever country you come from. She's doing some phenomenal work to help us all understand each other better. And she does that globally, and she does lots of amazing charity work as well, which I want to just put up on the screen as well if you're interested in supporting and donating to the charity that Maria supports. It's let me pronounce that right, Help Your Team. Is that right?
It means orphans in Arabic, so it's helping
orphans. Help the orphans. And I see you doing beautiful work. Do you want to just say something about that? What if people want to help, what are they helping with Help Your Team?
So Help Your Team focus predominantly in Africa, so orphans in Africa, and they try to go to really remote parts where I guess we say forgotten children. So we're supporting those children in terms of necessities, and also the people that look after them as well. So if we're supporting an orphanage in terms of the running of it, it's also paying teachers wages that may not ever get paid, and the women that are looking after these small children and all the necessities. So essentially just going around and being conscious of the orphans across the continent.
Well, it's beautiful work. You are doing beautiful work. Thank you for finding time to come and talk to us all and create a little bit more empathy for Ramadan. And hopefully we'll see you on here with something else very soon. But Ramadan Kareem, and have a fantastic rest of the month.
Thank you. And thank you as well for this. This is a great series. Thank you.
You're welcome. See you soon, Maria. Bye.
Bye. See you.